Thank you very much. It's really great to see a bunch of people come out for a pro-life forum. I want to thank the KFL for focusing on the issues that really count. And candidates were all focused in the same way on the issues that count. This is a big difference between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. The reason we have to have a Republican win is because if the Democrats take over Congress, all pro-life legislation and programs are going to stop, and we're going to just be talking about impeachment 24/7 until 2020 comes around. So this is an extremely important race. There's only 23, 24 seats that separate us from the Democrats in the House of Representatives, and they're coming hard, and Paul Davis is leading the charge. He has to be defeated. The person who wins this primary has to defeat Paul Davis. A lot depends upon it. Where are we going as a country? Are we going to go as Britain? Everybody's read what's going on with healthcare in Britain. Your own child can't have life-saving, free medical care in another country because British law says that they have to let the child die for its own good. We have it here with Terry Schiavo, you may remember. This is very serious. The culture of life and the culture of death are now enmeshed in a very difficult struggle that's going to go very quickly. We could lose this in a matter of years. This election is a critical part of that struggle. I helped found the first Kansans for Life chapter in Leavenworth, Kansas. I've been a great supporter of the Kansans for Life. I will tell you that I am attacked regularly by pro-abort groups and have been for a long time. If you don't believe me, check your newspaper, check your news feeds. I stand up for life and I will not back down, because what's most important is that we recognize the dignity of every human life, and we must sacrifice as necessary for those people who stand up, such as the unwed mothers who we ask to bear their child. For them, we should bear our cross. We must stand and deliver. We must help bring this culture back, because if we lose it, we will lose everything that we have inherited from our parents and our grandparents, and we will not have it to pass on to our children and our grandchildren. This is hard. We have to do it, all of us. I joined the Army as a private. I served in the infantry and the special forces. I graduated as lieutenant colonel. I ran my own business for 11 years. I spent 6 years in the Senate. And to tell you the truth, this is the most important battle, the most important enterprise I have ever been in, because I believe our culture, our future is at stake, and I believe this is a critical battle. I will support the winner of this primary, and I will support any pro-life candidate. We can't do anything else. We have to win this one. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to ask Alex and our helpers in the back if you could go ahead and distribute the ballots to everybody. And as we bring our panel on to start the questioning, the way this is going to be set up, the question will be presented by our panel. They will be given, the candidates will be, oh, I'm sorry, I just about left that one. He doesn't look like Kevin Jones. Carl Hansen is going to be representing Kevin Jones. I really do apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself. Go ahead. Kevin Jones.
I thought I got lucky there for a minute. These guys are something to follow, and Kevin's not here. But my name is Carl Hansen. I work with Kevin, and he is currently over in the State House. They're running late. They've got a big budget bill. If you've listened to the session at all today, this has been Liberal Christmas Tree Day, and they have rolled out any and everything they weren't able to get through the first part of the session, they're trying to hang on these budget bills. And so, as much as he would love to be here, in fact, this really pains him not to be here. This is near and dear to his heart. He's kind of like, I gotta stand up for Kansas in the job that I have right now. So he is over in the State House, just a few blocks away. Maybe he'll get to come over in just a little bit, but you know, and that's Kevin. He's dedicated to the cause. You probably saw in the paper a little while back this whole telemedicine bill that's out there right now, and you've got Planned Parenthood and all the rest of them trying to get telemedicine abortion inserted into that bill. And Kevin's been out front opposing that, and he mentioned in one of his admonishments to some of his colleagues that, you know, when you say you're with Kansans for life, that means you're Kansans for life all the time, not just part of the time. Well, the press had a meltdown, and that was the quote. It even made some of the national papers and whatnot, that he was stepping too deep into that pool, but that's just Kevin. Kevin's background, he grew up in Kansas, grew up in Wellsville, Kansas, and he graduated KU. He was actually the Jayhawk at KU, believe it or not, at one point. So, but after that, rather than pursuing a life of a mascot, he actually became a pastor, and ended up in Wichita, Kansas as a pastor, and he counseled women that were going into Tiller's clinic to try to give them other options and whatnot. And he was there routinely praying on the sidewalk with these ladies to help them out and hopefully show them a better path. And you know, it's one thing to just say you're pro-life or that you're going to walk the walk, but Kevin's there every time. And after 9/11, it was the same thing. He felt a call to service. And it wasn't just enough to, you know, do some volunteer work or that sort of thing for the moment. Kevin, like some of these other individuals, he enlisted in the Army. But it wasn't enough just to join the fight. He had to be the tip of the spear, and he became a Green Beret. And he deployed all around the world, including Iraq, defending the United States. So that's the kind of dedication that Kevin brings to things. And he's really disappointed he can't be here tonight, but I will try to fill in as best I can. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that, jumping ahead. Thank you, that was a very good speech. We're going to have our first panel go, and they're going to ask social issues questions. Here's the way the rules and guidelines are. You each have 2 minutes to respond. We would prefer that you don't refer to each other, but if somebody should refer to another candidate, they'll be given a 1-minute rebuttal time. If that should happen to occur, I'm sure that it won't. But if it should, that's the rule. And we just hope everybody here, we're here to have fun tonight and learn about the conservative candidates. But when it gets to be the fall, everybody in this room is going to have to do something, or we're going to end up with a liberal Democrat in Washington voting for Nancy Pelosi. And that's why we're trying to get you activated to help now. And alarm bells are ringing. So just realize all of these candidates here are putting themselves out on the line, and we really appreciate it. So we'll begin with our first panel, and I'll let the panelists introduce themselves as they begin the process. I will say that this is Jeannie Gowden, our lobbyist for Kansans for Life, and I'd appreciate it if you give her a big hand. She does a lot of work.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to ask a couple of questions. I'll start with one, then we'll move to the panelist, Phyllis, on my left, and then over to Robin on my right. First one is, of course, I've been lobbying for Kansans for Life since 1995, so I know everything Paul Davis has done throughout his entire tenure in the Kansas House. And he voted against pro-life legislation over 80 times. I think 3 times he voted actually with us. But the rest of the time, he's definitely an F- as far as a grade is concerned. So one of the things, most egregious things I think that he voted against was a ban on pain-capable unborn children. on abortions that would be performed on children who are fully formed in the womb and capable of feeling pain. And that is now law in the state of Kansas, but we're trying to get that at the federal level. So I would like to ask you, and I think starting with Senator Tyson and working our way to her left, would you support this legislation? It's important to the National Right to Life Committee, of which we're an affiliate. So would you support the Unborn Child Pain Capable Protection Act?
Absolutely. And this is an easy one for me. Not only did I support it, I'm the only candidate in the race that can say I voted for it. I voted for that legislation in the House. I voted for and supported and sponsored bills that not only the pain, but that would stop partial birth abortion, that would, I carried the bill and found sponsors for the bill that would defund Planned Parenthood in Kansas. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I'll tell you what, it's not about one person up here. It's about building coalitions and teams and working together, because not only did I carry that bill, it passed with 32 votes out of 40 senators. And it passed the House with over 80-some votes. But 32 Kansas state senators, that's a big margin in the Senate, if you guys don't know what's been going on lately. And so we need somebody that's going to be strong and be able to stand firm on their values and work with others. We need somebody that is willing to put their pro-life values on the line every single day, and I am willing to do that. I got to tell you, not only did Paul Davis, our Democrat opponent, vote against pro-life issues, he voted to give illegal immigrants benefits. He voted to increase budget spending. He voted for one of the largest K-12 cuts in the state of Kansas. His record speaks for itself. We will win this race. A strong Republican candidate will win this race by us working together and being a team.
Unequivocally, yes. This absurdity, this abortion, it's an assault on our decency, on our culture, and on our soul. Every loss of a little soul means that our collective American soul dies just a little bit. And I want to tell you a quick story. I was in Afghanistan about 2004. A village elder wanted to talk with me about America. And he said, you know, Captain Watkins, let me ask you a few questions. In America, do you know Bruce Willis? I said, no, sir, I don't know Bruce Willis. In America, does your government give you cars to drive? I said, no. No, despite what Bernie Sanders would want, no. He said, in America, do you guys kill babies? I said, no, that's absurd. Of course we don't kill babies. No, he goes, no, I heard that you kill babies when pregnant. I had to say, yes, we do. I have patriotism running through my veins, but in that moment, I was not very proud. I had an assault rifle in my hand, magazines and ammo, and I said, yeah, we kill babies. We kill millions of them. And I made the promise right then and there that I would do everything I could to make sure that in a year, in a decade, in a century, at some point, as soon as possible, we can say, no, no, sir. I'm from a country that does not kill babies. Thank you.
picture again. The answer is yes. You're not going to find that I'm going to have a voting record. I'm a city council person. I have boots on the ground. That's what you're going to find with me. You're going to find that as a registered nurse, I know how to read and understand when a patient is going into a high level of pain, even when the person is not able to talk. There are markers that are going to help me be able to understand that. The same thing for a baby. If I see people's blood pressure rise and I see their pulse level begin to lower, then that's going to be one indication for me to look at providing a different type of treatment. Values are not what you get from an experience. Values are what you take to an experience. I'm telling you, I'm taking my values of protecting babies, making sure people are not suffering, as a testament to you guys. Again, you're not going to find a voting record. I can only tell you, after practicing nursing for 30-some years, that's been my background. Thank you very much.
Like so many things, first off, to answer the question in short order, of course, I would support the pain-capable legislation at the federal level. I've supported every pro-life bill that has come. I've supported, co-sponsored, done what I could to have them get passed. Before being elected, I worked hard to get pro-life candidates elected. It's extremely important. Everything's about relationships. We explain things based on relationships. We talk about our values based upon relationships. And we were here this evening. I know I've seen a lot of you before at various things, and I recognize some of you, and hope you recognize me. And I was campaigning at an old age home, and I saw a woman there, and I went over and looked, and she looked up and had a little glint in her eye like she recognized me, and I said, "Do you know who I am?" And she said, "No. But if you ask at the desk, they can tell you." Well, you get humbled when something like that happens. Francie and I have 5 children, 19 grandchildren. We know what it's like dealing with children, grandchildren, putting them through college, and teaching them things. And the things that we try to teach them are the things that we're talking about today, tonight, what we're all trying to pass on. And that is, every life is valuable. Every life must be fought for. We must sacrifice for others, because that's the great law. Love God, love your neighbor. And who is your neighbor? The weakest. And who are the weakest and the smallest? The unborn. Thank you.
I hate to follow Steve because he's bigger than I am. Anyway, Kevin absolutely would vote in favor of that bill at the federal level. And when it comes to Paul Davis, it's not just this bill, it's so many other things. He supports sex selection, abortion. I mean, honestly, how sick and twisted do you have to be to go down that kind of path? And that's really the sad part about even having to talk about this issue, is how far down the drain our culture has gone. And that's why Kevin takes this battle outside of legislation and the State House and whatnot. He's involved in a lot of things to help bring up the next generation of leaders. Because it can't just be us in this room, it's got to be, you know, everybody together pulling generation after generation to fight this culture battle, because it's bigger than one issue. This is by far probably the most important issue, but we have got to have another generation of leaders coming up. So Kevin is investing himself not only in fighting the fight, but in growing the Army behind it so that we can keep this defensive line in place. So, yes, he would vote for that.
I'm Phyllis Setchell, and I have a question. We'll begin with Steve Watkins. Do you believe that our U.S. Constitution is a living document that can be changed and adapted over time without the intended amendment process, or do you believe that its current written form should be difficult to amend as our founders intended, and why?
Thank you for the question. Our Constitution should be difficult, and it is difficult to amend, and that is consistent with the founders' intent. Our values that we talked about tonight, values like limited government, patriotism, religious freedom, traditional family values, peace through military strength, and the gift of life. Those values serve as the foundation for an idea that was born in 1776 to an imperfect crew of Western revolutionaries. And they knew at the time that there'd be struggles and debates and changes, and that it wouldn't be any easier than when they drafted it in its original form. So I always admire their accomplishments and the miracle that are our documents, and they should be tough to change because values don't change. What got us this far will continue on. And that's again why we call these traditional values, why we call these American values. Okay? What we believe is aligned with our founders' intent. And liberal and progressives have got it all wrong. So thank you, and God bless.
Following Steve is always good. Okay. The answer is, and I know it's been said, and I'm going to say it again, I took an oath to defend this country against enemies both foreign and domestic. I took that when I was in the Army, and I took that as a retired, when I was a federal law enforcement officer. So I took that oath a couple of different times. I believe in our Constitution. I will always believe in our Constitution. The Constitution is a living document, and we saw it change a couple of different times. We saw it change at the end of the Civil War. We saw a couple of amendments come in. We saw it change again in the 1920s. We saw an amendment come in, and what happened to the amendment later on? It went out. Okay? So people have to have a voice. We have to have a voice in that Constitution. I know that when I look back at 1776, and I really love history, to look at how our representatives at that time fought to make sure that we would have a strong union, a union that would last beyond the original predicted 20 years. We're working on how many years now? Come on, folks, this is participatory. Okay, that's all right, that's all right. A lot of years. Oh, and I just want to say one thing, if I can say this. My wife is sitting out there at that table by herself. She has not heard me do a whole lot of this. Could someone please invite my wife in? Thank you so much.
Yeah, the question is, do I see the Constitution as a living document that can be changed as times change? And the answer has been given already. Through an amendment, it can be changed. And it has been changed many times through amendments. Amendments are hard, and rightfully so. We're trying to get an amendment on the Kansas Constitution now because there's a judge who says the Kansas Constitution includes the right to abortion, and the judge says that's found directly in the part of the Constitution that says we have a right to life. And when it went up to the appeals court, they split even. They don't know if a right to life means a right to abortion. This is a Kansas court, and it's coming up before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court hasn't issued their opinion on it yet. And so we're preparing an amendment to the Kansas Constitution. Now, think about this for a second. A constitutional amendment that says there is no right to an abortion in the Kansas Constitution. We've got to go that far. We've got federal judges who say that the emanation of a penumbra gives you, of the 14th Amendment, gives you the right to abortion. Really? Yeah, it's a living document. In the hands of liberal judges, it's a living document. And it's a Frankenstein is what it is. We need the people and their representatives to speak loudly that we're not going to tolerate this sort of chicanery with our Constitution, either at the federal level or at the state level. The Constitution is what the people say, and it should not be manipulated in that manner. And we need to make sure that we don't allow that to happen. Thank you.
I won't beat a dead horse here too much, but yeah, absolutely. It is not a living, breathing document. The fathers foresaw the day when things might have to change. There is a mechanism in place if things need to change. But that change was never intended to be with 9 rogue justices in D.C. or a handful of rogue justices here in Kansas. The mechanism was set out, ours with people. It's not with unelected individuals. And that's where Kevin would stand on that issue.
It is not a living document. The meaning of our U.S. Constitution does not change and should not change. It is very difficult to change the U.S. Constitution. It takes 2/3 of states to ratify it. It can be initiated by Congress or it can be initiated by state legislators, but it takes 2/3 of states, and it should be a high bar to change our U.S. Constitution. That being said, in 2020, we are going to be celebrating the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Do you know what that was? That was when women got the vote. Exactly. And I speak about this because it is critical. One vote counts. It counts so much. A state senator from Tennessee received a letter from his mother the night before he was going to vote to ratify. And he was going to be a no vote. His mother asked him to vote to support it. So again, it's about coalitions and teams. You may not be the person casting the vote, but you can have an impact on that. And that's what we need, is people that will work together and get representation and get things done. And do we need our Constitution amended? I support an amendment for a balanced budget for the United States. I support an amendment to our U.S. Constitution for term limits. We need people who are going to go to D.C. We need somebody for the 2nd District that is going to go and get things done. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Robin Essex, and I'm with Family Policy Alliance of Kansas. Wanted to say thank you so much for everybody coming tonight. We appreciate it. My question is about religious liberty, and as you've probably heard, the Supreme Court is expected to rule later this year on Jack Phillips, the owner of the Masterpiece Cake Shop, basically against the same-sex couple in Colorado. The owner of the cake shop shared that he had always served everyone, but refused to cater their wedding because of his deeply held religious beliefs. This pits religious freedom against anti-discrimination laws. So what side do you fall on in this debate, and who is discriminating against who? Mr. Fields, would you start this question and we'll work the same direction?
Who's discriminating against who is part of the question, and do I support his religious rights? I want to become clear with that question. Yes. You've heard me say that the Constitution is important. It's Specifically, I'm going to talk now about the First Amendment. The First Amendment tells us that we have a freedom of speech, a freedom of religion, and from that perspective, I think he is authorized or should be able to practice his belief. It borderlines. I'm an African American. I guess that's not a surprise. Okay? So it borderlines. Because in the 1950s, here in this state, we had issues that were pretty similar to where people might have used a religion as one reason or one purpose, and then turned around and used it similarly to discriminate against people. I believe in religion, and I believe that religion you should be able to do what you want to do from a religious perspective. I'm United Methodist, been that way for most of my life, and I have very strong beliefs in God. But I also have to warn people about discriminating. And discrimination can be seen in the eyes of the individual. So if someone's looking at me and they're seeing me differently, I have to ask the question, is it because of their religious beliefs? Because there are 273 passages in the Bible that supported slavery. 273. Whew. So we can use religion to say, hey, our Constitution was wrong when we passed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. We have to be real cautious with looking at how we're going to address that. And it really is in the eye of the beholder.
Vernon, you may get the first 1 minute rebuttal. This is not about discrimination against people in any way at all. This is not. To equate this with discrimination on race or anything else, it's absolutely wrong. In the case that's been cited, the people who were involved had been customers of this cake shop before and had been served with no problem. The problem was that the proprietor of the cake shop, and decorating cakes is an art. Try it sometime. It's an art. And what we're saying is we can dictate to an artist what they will do. You will give me art that celebrates what your religion says is anathema. Yeah, there's passages in the Bible that also say you will sacrifice to false gods. This is very similar. You believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, not because somebody defined it that way, or some law says it's that way. It's an ontological thing. It is. That's religion. Rather, that's marriage. Nothing else is. That's marriage. One man, one woman is marriage. 2 is bigamy. Got to have 1 marriages to have bigamy. Multiple is polygamy. But you got to have 1 and 1. It's just, come on guys, we've been doing this for a long time. But to say that something else is marriage is just crazy. It's wrong. And when God says in his word that it is anathema, it is not to be tolerated, it is to be shunned, okay, fine. But then to tell an artist, you will use your creative power to participate in and celebrate. Got it.
Mr. Fields, would you like to respond? 1 minute.
I'm not gonna need a whole minute. I'm gonna need 3 minutes. No. The scriptures are the scriptures. They are what they are. We practice our religions from our personal perspective of what that religion means. Religion and discrimination, 2 different things. You practice your religion and you practice discrimination. Now, practicing discrimination, I'm not saying it, well, I guess you can say that there are some scriptures in the Bible where the Bible tells us to separate, but discrimination clearly is focused on a thought process. It is clearly focused on this thing called a prejudicial bias. I'm not saying that in the religion piece, but I clearly see it in the discriminatory piece. Thank you.
Hot up here. Kevin would always be on the side of religious freedom, because this discussion said who's discriminating against who. It's not about discrimination, it's about indoctrination. That's what this is about. If we were talking about discrimination, it would be a discussion about respect, respecting others and their views and that sort of thing. That's not good enough for the other side. It's not about enough just to respect someone or to let bygones be bygones. No, you have to adopt their ideology. You have to almost adopt their lifestyle. Otherwise, it's not acceptable. And that's just simply not right. And we're seeing it right now across the way here in the State House, where this debate is going on about religious freedom and adoption. And there is a group out there that wants to force our different religious institutions that do an amazing job adopting children, to force them into doing same-sex adoptions. And they want to shut them down if they don't. That's what this whole thing is about. It doesn't matter that there's dozens of other places that people can go for that. It's because these groups won't adopt that ideology. This is about indoctrination. It has nothing to do with discrimination.
We're losing our freedoms from our own government. Forcing a bakery to shut down and serve individuals that is against their religion. How could government ever get involved in that conversation? That bakery should be free to choose whom they want. You can put a sign on the door that says, we get to decide who we have service to. You've seen that when you go into restaurants. So we are losing our freedoms from our government. We need to repeal Obamacare. Obamacare requires businesses to provide birth control. It requires their employees to have insurance that allows and provide birth control. We saw Chick-fil-A fight this. We saw Hobby Lobby fight this. We saw the Little Sisters of Charity fight this. These are fights that we shouldn't have with our government. There is no way a health care bill should mandate that birth control and abortions are paid for by our insurance and by our government. We need to stop this. We need to absolutely stop this.
Stuff drives me crazy. Last summer, I finished up I call one of my 2 tours in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I tell you, you just wouldn't believe these liberals. I mean, they believe. To me, it touches on role of government. All right, when the government is telling us what to do, it's called indentured servitude. All right, and the role of government, they believe, is to rectify all the injustices of the universe, and in order to do so, take your wealth and subject you to indentured servitude. We're going to push back. That plays into their larger narrative that all of us are racist, sexist, bigots who hate the poor. Well, I'm not buying it, okay? I'm going to protect religious freedom at all costs. It's all right, given to us by God.
Okay, this next question will start with Steve Fitzgerald. Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion business, receives approximately $1.5 million a day in government money. Would you support legislation at the federal level to prevent taxpayer funding of abortion?
Yes. I thought it might have been multiple choice, but yeah, okay. Planned Parenthood and I have entered into a correspondence that has gotten national attention. They sent me a letter that said that a donation had been made in my honor. So I sent them back a letter. I mean, you know, if you want to be a courteous correspondent, you reply rapidly. And I told them, this is as bad as being associated with Dachau. Thank you, no, it's not an honor. Well, they published that, and firestorms went off. I got phone calls from New York and San Francisco and everywhere else. How could you? Okay, well, we went through that. And then recently, we had another little problem in that I put a proviso on the budget that said that we can spend no money on an agency that permits or conducts research on aborted fetuses or destructive embryonic research. And it actually passed. It passed. We did good on that one. But one of the senators said, what are you talking about? We need to do this for scientific knowledge, for research, to help. Well, okay, so you're going to kill innocent humans to advance research, to advance science. Where have I heard that before? Yeah, Dr. Mangler, a very noted genetic researcher prior to the war, prior to becoming in, and that was even bigger. It's still ongoing firestorm. Thank you.
It boils down to hypocrisy. When you look at all these folks that have gone to Congress, promised us all the moon and the stars, and they're pro-life and so on and so forth, but they get up there and they vote for a $1.3 trillion omnibus bill that funds over $500 million to Planned Parenthood. And yet at the same time, we're told, well, we just can't get the votes for the Johnson Amendment to be repealed. So they're silencing the churches and even discussing this issue while funding Planned Parenthood and telling us that that's the best we're going to get. And that's just a load of bull. This comes down to integrity of who you're going to send up there. And when you dig deep into some of the candidates in the various races, including this one, you're going to find that some things aren't squaring with what the people are saying. There's some folks who promote marriage equality before they decided to run for this office and scrub their Facebook page. There's some people that have ongoing relationships with people who have been awarded Planned Parenthood's Volunteer of the Year. But they're telling you tonight that they're pro-life and they're going to stand tall for you. You've been asked not to name names about stuff, so I won't be the skunk at the picnic. But that being said, do your research, because this is too important to let another one slide by and go up there and give us a big Planned Parenthood sandwich when it comes time to vote on the budget. Thank you.
Absolutely, I would vote to stop funding for Planned Parenthood. There's a national bill, a federal bill, that would stop Planned Parenthood funding and transfer that funding to community health. And I would support that legislation. I would work hard for that legislation. And I agree with the integrity. We absolutely need that. We need somebody who's going to tell you where they stand, and they're going to go vote that way in D.C. and work that way in D.C. They're not going to campaign one way and tell you something to get elected and then go do the opposite. And integrity is, I'm the tax chairman in the Kansas Senate, and I was the vice chairman. And I voted against the second largest and the largest tax increase in Kansas ever, as the chairman. Yes, I signed the document. Yes, you can applaud. Yes, I signed the document that allowed the debate. I allowed the debate to go forward as the vice chair and the chairman. But when people were standing on the Senate floor, yelling at me, trying to convince me to vote for the largest tax increase ever in Kansas in 2015, I stood strong and I voted no, because that's how I campaigned And that's my promise to my constituents. I vote how I campaign. You should be able to take anybody's palm card and you should be able to go and look at the bill and see how they're going to vote. It shouldn't be a debate or a question. That's what we're tired of. We're tired of sending political people who will change with the wind. We need somebody that's going to stand where we had that vote today. We were asked to expand gambling, and I had campaigned in my Senate campaign against expanding gambling. And boy, we were leaned on heavy today because it was good for agriculture, it was good for jobs, it was good for Kansas. I stood strong and said, no, we do not need to expand gambling in Kansas. You know, to me, you can make this as complicated as you want, but it's black and white.
Thank you. Let's talk about Planned Parenthood. Make no mistake about it, Planned Parenthood's #1 priority is abortion. There is no significant prenatal care or mammograms. They're consistently found to break the law and overbill. So when you hear Planned Parenthood, of course, I don't think the Hyde Amendment goes far enough. I would support a complete defunding of Planned Parenthood, which includes all Title X funds, and those funds should be redirected to prenatal care providers, which are found throughout the district, the ones that actually provide good quality health care to expecting mothers. But taking it down to the individual and to the personal level, I know a physician who sits across from young pregnant women who are typically alone and afraid. That physician says, listen, miss, I've had this conversation with a lot of women. None of them have ever regretted having a baby, and almost all of them regret having an abortion. There's a human piece to all of this. We should remember that. We should get rid of Planned Parenthood along the way. Thank you.
You know, going last has some benefits. I don't have to say the same thing over again. But what I can say is this. A very good friend of mine, who I'm going to call Dr. M, is the head surgeon, head doctor at a facility clinic. Her job is to help people that are struggling with becoming pregnant to get pregnant. And then from there, continue to move forward and help with the pregnancy. So we have registered nurses, you know, like me and others that are working to help people see a pregnancy through. The answer is about the funding. The answer is yes. I want to say a little bit about character, though. Every time you make a choice, you display your character. And I'm simply saying that the choices that I've made as a registered nurse, as a law enforcement officer, as an educator, talks about who I am. You'll get an opportunity, check out my card, and you'll see a whole article, 2-page article, newspaper article on me talking about my courage to continue to have the same structure and character that I've always had throughout my entire life, from the time of being a little Boy Scout all the way through the military. Thank you.
Thank you all for that. We're going to change up our panels now, and I've got a few announcements to make. So you made it through the social issues part. We're going to do some agriculture and some general questions now. I have a few announcements. Alex, we're going to distribute some donor cards. We can't have a Kansans for Life event knowing what's coming up ahead of us with the Supreme Court poised to make it so abortion under our Kansas Constitution supposedly is a right, which we're going to have to work to repeal. We can't do this without taking up an offering donation. So Alex is going to pass. We do need to ask, if you give us a check or money, you need to give us. We have a donation card. The federal law requires that you give us certain information. So they're passing out donation cards, and we're going to pass the hat around and take up a donation offering. And this money will go towards the upcoming elections. We're going to have a lot of activity going on because we've got to replace about 15 or 20 House Representative members, and we need to have a pro-life governor. We've got a lot of work to do. And then the other thing, when you leave, there's going to be a sign-up sheet on the table as you leave the door. And if you're interested in helping us in the elections and to volunteer, we need your help. Can't be done without bodies and people. So I'm going to have Alex put a sign-up sheet at the table if you're interested in making phone calls, if you're interested in helping at the KFL office, if you're interested in, we'll have teams doing literature distribution. Sign up, give us your email, give us your phone number, and we'll get a hold of you, and we need your help. The other thing is, I guess all the ballots have been distributed. If you need one and you haven't got one, they're at the back table. We'll collect those after this panel completes its work. Then we're going to take a few questions from the audience, and we'll pick up those ballots. Let's see if I covered everything. I got a few notes. I think that's everything. So I'll let you folks introduce yourself, and your panel is free to go. I'll keep fun.
Thanks, everybody. Glad everyone's here tonight. What a good crowd. So, I'm Elizabeth Patton. I'm the grassroots director for Americans for Prosperity Kansas, and we just have a few questions here tonight related to a few things that we are also concerned about. So, I think this first question this afternoon, evening, I haven't had enough coffee tonight. Sorry. The first question I think here is starting with Carl for Kevin Jones. I think you're up for first. This is a topic that's been hotly debated today, even at the State House here in Kansas. So a major topic of discussion for both Congress and the Trump administration has been funding for Medicaid expansion under the 2010 federal health care law, properly known as Obamacare. As you know, the president's budget this year did not include funding for Medicaid expansion, and several bills considered by Congress last year would have made changes to Medicaid funding in the form of block grants to the states. With this in mind, do you believe that federal funding for Medicaid expansion in its current form is sustainable? And if not, what changes do you believe should be made to the federal government and how the federal government funds this program?
Well, it's not sustainable. In fact, most of our entitlement programs are not sustainable. It's a growing and growing part of the budget. It's why it's so hotly debated in the State House, even without Medicaid expansion attached to Medicaid. It's a big deal. About a third of the Kansas budget, I think, something like that. It's huge, and that's just in Kansas. We're one of the smallest population states, and there's no way that this can continue to be sustained. There's also been proven so much abuse and whatnot in that program that we need to start, cutting the fat and going through the work requirements that have been talked about are a tremendous first step. In Kansas, we've already done that with some of the programs, welfare programs, to great success. The people that have gotten off of that have seen their incomes rise. They may or may not be out of poverty yet, but at least they're on their way to a better life. It's supposed to be a help in life, not a lifestyle. It should be a temporary stop along the way, and we should make reforms to ensure that it is a stop along the way. Medicaid expansion in Kansas, if that were to come to Kansas, that's a $1.1 billion tab for the Kansas state taxpayers. The state taxpayers, not talking about your federal, but your state taxpayers. boom, right out of the chute. So no, we can't at all sustain it.
We cannot afford Medicaid expansion in its current form. We absolutely cannot afford it as a state. I've often said we need a Kansas solution. When we had this issue before us, I reached out to other states, Senate presidents, Senate legislators, and found out what they were doing. They created solutions that were particular to their state, and that's what Kansas needs to do. We need to get a disclaimer, basically. There's a legal term for it, but we need a disclaimer, and then we go forward with how we're going to handle our Medicaid in Kansas, but not by a blanket Medicaid expansion. We do not need that. I have voted against it. I've been consistent on this issue. As far as welfare and other benefits, we need to cut the fraud and the abuse. If we're competing about who's had the furthest away people disappointed or upset or screaming and yelling at them, I got phone calls from Ireland. I had the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Huffington Post, all of them printing information because I put 2 amendments on a bill on welfare. And we passed those amendments twice in both chambers. And one of them was the TANF card. It's a cash card for welfare. The amendment was that they can only get $25 per day at the ATM machine. They could not get it. They could get the rest of the cash at the grocery store or the bank, wherever they needed to, but they were limited to $25 per day at the ATM machine. We have fraud and abuse going on. That card is used at strip clubs, smoke shops, casinos. That would eliminate some of that. The other amendment that I got on and that became law is that we check the identity with the technology in my background, electronic check when they fill out the application. So we make sure the person is who they say they are. It's simple. It saves the state money. They don't have to chase the fraud and the abuse. And it was very effective. Thank you.
Thank you. This entitlement culture in our country has to stop. It absolutely has to stop. No, it's not sustainable in its current form, and we all know that because we're sensible, right? You know, to take a closer look at the healthcare industry, which, you know, that's part and parcel to the question on what we've got is a system that is broken, and whenever you have a large and complex system, and you'd like for the services and products to be better and faster and cheaper, you have to unlock the potential of the service providers. You do that by overlaying it or building it atop a free market system characterized by transparency and competition. That's the only way to drive down prices, to drive up quality, to decrease delivery time, to make it in a safer working environment. Whatever the metrics are, the free market economy will deliver. It always has, and it always will. Thank you.
It's an honor to share the stage with these intelligent candidates here, and they just kind of reminded me of something. I grew up on welfare. I didn't know anything other than welfare. Grew up in the projects. Ever heard of projects before? Well, I'm a projects kid. 10 years old. Heard me talk about 10 years old. At 10 years old, I decided that there had to be something different in my life. So at 10 years old, I put together a little shoe shine kit. Went downtown and started shoe shining and started making my own money. I'm going to answer the question. The answer to the question is, it's not sustainable. But I think that it has to be also looked at, you know, from my eyes in terms of having been there. I was in the United States Army in 1981, and the Army put me on welfare. See, let me say that again. I was in the Army, United States Army, getting full-time Army pay, and the Army put me on welfare. Why? Because the Army pay wasn't high enough. So some of these social programs, even if we fight all of our life to stay off of them, we still end up on them. And that's something that I just did not enjoy. Broad brushes in terms of how we're going to approach this, it's not going to work. We have to get real specific. I'm a registered nurse, I said that. And I'm looking at these at the care levels of care. Yes, if we get in a free market, we'll get better quality from higher pay in nursing. But I want to share this also with you. 1983, when I got my nursing license, I came out of nursing school making $6 an hour. Can you imagine that? $6 an hour. This is the person that's trying to save your life. So we do have to look at a free market. We do have to look at different ways that we can get higher quality healthcare providers out there, and I think that free market approach will work.
Yeah, we did the HOPE Act, among other things, in Kansas. We've been resisting the expansion of Medicaid. One of the things, and no, Obamacare is not sustainable. The numbers don't work. But let me tell you something about those numbers. There's about $70 billion that was taken out of Medicare and used to fund Obamacare, expansion of Medicaid. Now, there's a difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is your money. You paid it, and your employer paid it. They took that money to give it away. And then they told the people who are providing or getting reimbursed through Medicare that you're not going to get as much money as you were getting to take care of the Medicare patients because we took the money away. This is what happens with nationalized medicine. When the decisions are not in the free market, when people take your money away from you and then they're going to provide you a service, but they have some other things they want to do too. We have to stay away from this as far as possible. The other candidates have made it clear free market is the best way to do that. And the thing is, you have to have a payer system where the person receiving the care is providing the pay to those who are providing the care. That way, good decisions get made all across. When you have a third-party payer who's not involved, you have all kinds of problems that we're seeing right now. So if I have my own insurance and they give me money to pay for my insurance, that's fine. I'm not against medical insurance, health insurance, and so forth. What I am against, and I think the other candidates are as well, is where I don't have the ability as a patient to get a different provider to go to a different place. So when you take that out of the equation, everything suffers. All good deals are done at arm's length with a walk-away capability. So, no, it's not sustainable, and we shouldn't even want to try and make it sustainable. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Blake Ramsey. I'm with the Kansas Department of Agriculture, but I'm also a volunteer for Americans for Prosperity. And I'm going to be asking a couple questions on agriculture. The first question is, American farmers are facing the lowest profit margins in recent years. As a representative, what would be your priorities to support the agriculture community? And this question is for Senator Tyson.
If you have your questions that you're submitting from the audience, can you pass them up the front here and up to the end here, and I'll come collect them. So just make your questions make their way to the ends, and we'll get your. I want to make sure everybody gets turned in.
Well, my background, I'll give you a little bit of, I was raised out, my parents ran a small agribusiness. And so I started working young in agriculture. My husband and I, like I said, own and operate Tyson Ranch. I met my husband at Weber Hall at K-State, for those of you that don't know, a world-class meat lab. So I have a strong agriculture background. I understand how important it is to Kansas. It's critical. Over 43% of the state's economy depends on Kansas. Approximately $67 billion. It is what makes Kansas go. You may not realize it, most of us in this room realize it. But not only do farmers and ranchers provide the food, they provide the economy for Kansas. And what I would do as a federal legislator, I would fight to protect the crop insurance program. That may sound like it only deals with crops, but it's more complicated than that. As a software engineer, I got to work on that program. It also allows our farmers to have some sustainability. They're not, it's a gamble. If you want a risky job or you don't need to play the stock market, just farm. You're fighting the weather, you're fighting prices out of your control. It's international. So the tariffs impact our economy. It is so critical what is going on at the federal level right now to the Kansas economy. And like I said, it's hard to see that chain effect if you're not aware of it. But NAFTA, CAFTA, all of those things impact the Kansas farm economy. We need to open up more markets to Kansas agriculture. We need businesses in Kansas that we can sustain that are agriculture industries. And this one, you're not going to see coming, but we need to fix illegal immigration. We need an immigration system where we can allow, thank you. We need an immigration system where we can allow legals to enter and work in our country, especially in the agriculture industry. We need those migrant workers. So I'll go on the immigration. We need to fix the wall, build the wall. We need to stop the lottery, the visa lottery. We need to stop giving benefits to illegal immigrants. And we need to secure our country.
So my thought and my leadership is largely influenced by my parents. My dad began farming when he was 12 years old. And in the house, there was no running water in Holton and Denison. I think it was from those years that shaped his worldview, and he passed that along to me. And I see that. I see that last week, for example, when I walked a farm in Fairview and talked with Austin and Kendall, who worked so very hard, tirelessly, and they shared their concerns with me. They included crop insurance, they included broadband access, and other farm programs. They explained how a 1% change could be the difference between profit and loss. A family that works the hardest should never be drugged down by a family who doesn't work, and so I'm very proud that the 2018 Farm Bill includes a stipulation requiring that a 20-hour work week be necessary for all SNAP recipients. I'm also very proud of Kendall and Austin and all our hardworking Kansans, and if given the chance, I'll fight for them and all agriculture producers, because those who work the hardest shouldn't be dragged down by SNAP recipients. So thank you.
I talked about working at age 10. At age 16, I worked for Tyson's. Just wanted to put that out there. The reason we'll be putting it out there is that about a month ago, and not my friend here, Tyson, but Tyson's chicken. And that's not saying that, so she doesn't get a rebuttal, But the county commissioners of Leavenworth County, I think we've all heard about what happened with Tyson's food trying to come into the Tonganoxie area. Is there anyone here that has not heard about that and how much of a challenge it was? Okay. I was appointed to the board of directors about a month ago to assist with any future type economic development that has to do with companies like Tyson's and other agricultural companies of that nature. My grandmother was born and raised here in Paola, in Kansas. Migration, because of agricultural issues, caused people to follow the money. You follow the cattle, you follow the pigs, you follow the grain. So my family migrated from Kansas to Nebraska. My father thought that I was going to be part of that industry, and I said, Daddy, I want to get an education. So I went a different way. But today at my city council retreat, which was 8 hours, we spoke about the 100+ chicken farms that we probably would have had in and around that area. We talked about all the different grain farms that we would probably have around that area. So yes, I am looking at economic development to help the farmers here. I'm also looking at, we talked about the crop insurance, and that is important. But on the same token, if we could not get people to come to Kansas because of some of the choices that we made, such as making sure we didn't do the right thing with the Tyson thing, and yes, I'm a big advocate. I tell folks, we did not do the right thing. We need to make sure that we pass legislation and pass rules and regulations that's going to support Kansans in bringing in crops and doing it the right way. Do it the Kansas way. Perfect.
No, I love that he brought it up. I am not with Tyson Foods. I'm with Tyson Ranch in Parker, Kansas. And I got to tell you, it was funny because I was in Tonganoxie speaking to some individuals, and they asked me, because you all saw the signs, no Tyson and Tongi. Maybe you didn't see them. Well, they said, how are you going to win Tonganoxie? I said, that's simple. Hard work, and I'm not chicken.
Chicken though.
What a feel. What's the question again?
As a representative,
I can talk about Tyson chicken and Tongi.
all right. As a representative, what would be your priorities to support the agriculture community?
Yeah, the priority, let me tell you a little bit about what I know about agriculture. You can get your food on aisle 3. And I'm a city kid, not anymore. Grew up in the Bronx, New York, went out on Long Island. I was out in the country. Went with a friend of mine for no good reason to go potato farming. And we did that. I did that for 1 year, well, not quite a full year. Potatoes are great. You don't have to milk them. It's pretty good. There were 750, 100 weight stacked in the yard. We had to kill them. You kill potatoes by spraying them. You have to let them sit 10 days. The skin has to toughen so it can resist the digging process. By the time we got them dug and stacked in the yard, it went down to $3.50 a hundredweight. It was costing us $5.50 a hundredweight to grow. That was all I needed to know about farming. I joined the Army. The point that was made is that it is a big gamble. Yeah, it is. There's no doubt about it. The American farmer is the most productive in the world. We produce more food, better quality food, better variety of food than anybody else. We do it at a better price, and we can ship it to where it needs to go without much of a problem. We have tariff problems that need to be fixed. We've got problems from the EPA, who have put in some ridiculous regulations that have been harmful and did not necessary. No, you're kidding, really? You took out that whole thought at the beginning? Yeah. I'm in favor of helping the American farmer. Thank you.
Well, a couple things on that. Kevin is actually a specialty farmer, specialty crop farmer. He raises these specialty berry varieties and things like that. I'm not going to pretend to really know anything at all about that, but anyway, that's kind of been his bailiwick, is coming up with new ideas, new products, something, and that's where we've got to go with some of this. If we can't raise prices, then we need to start looking at things around, and that's new products, but also looking at the other side of the ledger. If your revenues can't go up, which is where we're stuck right now, then you better start looking at your expenses, and that's where the government is just on eight. They have run up the cost on our farmers like nobody's business, from ridiculous EPA regulations to even just a few years ago, the genius idea of the Obama administration Department of Labor and whatnot. They were going to regulate child labor on your farm. If your kid grew up on the farm, they wanted to come talk to him, and I'd probably get him assigned a lawyer and everything else to sue you for his benefits. But anyway, just crazy stuff like that. And then you have the Farm Bill. They call it the Farm Bill, but in the Farm Bill, only about that much of it is actually anything to do with the farm. The rest of it is welfare programs and other government programs, and it's all stuffed in there. And then when they come down to talking about the farm part, well, I'm sorry, we just don't have the money left for that. We're going to have to really scrutinize those farm programs because, you know, this Farm Bill, we only have so much. These foo-foo programs are crowding out what that was supposed to be about in the first place. Again, it gets back to integrity, and that's what we need to do to bring some rational equilibrium to the marketplace and whatnot, is to get rid of the junk, let the farmers farm and do what they do best, and that'll make things better.
Okay, this question has two parts to it, but they're related. So recently, Congress passed tax reform that provided much needed tax relief to American families and workers. Shortly after that, very recently, more than $1 trillion omnibus appropriations bill was passed by Congress, funding large increases in federal spending in almost every area. So my question to you is, where do you stand on these pieces of legislation, and how do you see, what are some changes you would make in Congress going forward?
Thank you. I tell you, there's a lot I like about the tax plan. Lowering the tax rate from 30 to 21% makes the U.S. businesses more competitive abroad, and I see that abroad when I go to a mall and I think, you know, why is that a Carrefour? Why can't that be a Walmart? Well, I tell you why. It's because under the Obama administration, he choked those companies so they couldn't go expand abroad. So I'm really liking the tax bill. I'm really liking the tax policy, and so I think, and it also was sold to the Americans as being a benefit to the individual, but and it is, and I think we're feeling that now. But it's also a benefit to companies. You know, Burger King incorporated in Canada, Pfizer in Ireland. Money goes where it's welcome. Companies will go where they're welcome. All right, if we don't always think of it like this, but these companies, these Fortune 5, Fortune 100 companies, they're our varsity players. And we need them to be able to compete and contribute to the international marketplace. And we all benefit that way. They can only do so with a fair and low tax rate. So, but as for spending, oh boy, you know, if Republicans can't be fiscally conservative in Washington, then nobody can. Right? I think the entitlements are way too bloated. I think we need to go back to more hard fiscal conservative policy, and I don't think I would have voted for that. So, thank you.
Okay, everybody that has a question from the audience, if you have it, we're going to have our guys come down on both sides, and if you have a ballot, stick your ballots and your questions in the baskets as they come down. Just like at Baptist church.
So it's amen and pass the plate. There you go. Tax reform. I support it. I thought it was great. I even got $55 back this year. So I thought it was great. That was laugh. Federal spending in most areas. I remember in the 1970s, the Army was telling me, spend, spend, spend. And we were spending money on things that didn't make sense, like color TVs. I needed more bullets. I didn't need color TVs. So I'm saying that when the spending went up in almost every area, there are some areas that spending needs to go up. Our defense funds clearly need to go up. The things that we do for helping our veterans, some of that stuff needs to stay up. Then there are other areas. There are other entitlement programs that we can look at cutting back. Sometime today, I had a budget meeting. Again, I'm city council, so our whole thing is making sure that we don't raise the taxes and that we try to make sure we have a balanced budget. I think the state requires us to have so much of a reserve. I do believe we need to have a balanced budget in the federal government and that we need to stop spending. One thing that makes our city successful is because of the conservative values that we're looking at when we're passing our budget stuff. For instance, we're only looking at a 5% increase this year. 5%. That's very conservative when we look at the fact that sometimes our income in our city ends up being between 7 and 8%. So I would take those same kind of approaches to the federal government and say, look, we can do better. We can do better. If we can do it on a small scale, and I think people have heard me say this again, the best government is government at what level? Local level.
Yeah, taxes. Who likes taxes? Nobody. We have to pay them. Very much in favor of the tax cut. I think it was a great thing. One of the best things about it is it allowed us to repatriate a lot of money that the international corporations that were mentioned earlier kept overseas. Enormous amounts of money kept overseas, mainly because if they brought it back here as taxed twice at a very high level. We brought that down. We brought much more capital back into the United States. That's capital that's available to go in and be invested not only in the corporations that had the money, but it could go out and be invested in other companies throughout our economy. It was very helpful, and we saw a shot in the arm from that tax cut, as well as from the reduction in the regulations that we saw. So restoring the American prosperity is underway. It's working. It's going in the right direction. And those kind of policies are what's helpful in getting that done. Spending. We defeated the Soviet Union. I put a good part of my life in the struggle to defeat the Soviet Union. And we did it the old-fashioned American way, with a checkbook. We outspent them. We had better and more arms programs. SDI finally did it, and we finally got them spent to the point where they couldn't touch it anymore. What happened was their national debt stopped them. Not our weapons, not the military program was pretty good. They couldn't afford it. We are in a similar situation now, and we better be careful. The biggest threat to this country is our debt. We have to fix that. That's how the Soviet Union went down. How do you fix the debt? You reduce spending, as has been mentioned, and you have to increase our prosperity. We can grow our way out of this problem. We've had large debt before, and we grew our way out. We have to do it again. I was going to tell you how.
Well, the real key to all of this is spending, because that's the pressure on the tax side, right? And thank goodness that we did get some tax reform. We've got money coming back, jobs being created. Highest economic growth since the Reagan years. Absolutely amazing. But we've got to get the spending side under control. In this latest omnibus and whatnot, not only did we have the $500 million for Planned Parenthood, but we had $465 million for Big Bird. We are subsidizing Sesame Street and people that talk like this on the radio. And it's absolutely absurd. What are we doing spending money like that? On top of that, Congress gave themselves a $1,000 a month car allowance. $1,000 a month car allowance. If you run that on Google and see what you can lease for $1,000 a month, it's not even American car. It's like cars that you can't even pronounce the name of. And yet this is what they're out there doing for themselves. That's the problem, folks. It's a problem of integrity. And that's why Kevin put it in writing. He has signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge that he will not raise taxes. And he's signed the Reject the Debt Pledge, that any increase in spending needs to be offset elsewhere, because we cannot continue piling up debt after debt after debt and expect that the bill will never come due. Eventually, that's going to wreck our economy. And we can't keep cutting one side of the ledger if we're not going to get control of the other side of the ledger.
The tax cuts and the omnibus, it's interesting. I support the tax cuts, absolutely. In fact, not only do I support them, we need to make them permanent. They're only 10-year tax cuts. We need to make those tax cuts permanent. The omnibus, the president, I support President Trump. And I'll tell you what, he did it right. He got sent an omnibus bill that was not good. And so he made the best of it. He took the money from Planned Parenthood. He took money, the increased security money, and he's going to start building the wall. I mean, he's getting it done. We need to send somebody to Washington, D.C. who has the experience, has the knowledge, the skill set, and will work to support our president. We need to drain the swamp, basically. That's it. It's that simple. He needs individuals that are going to go up and support him and work with him. And that's what I will do. We'll get it done. Send somebody to Washington, D.C. who knows how to work. I worked on the tax bill in Kansas, and I can tell you one of my biggest fights this year is the tax cuts, the federal tax cuts in 2017. If we don't pass legislation in Kansas this year, most of you in this room are going to have a tax increase. And that is not good. And I have been fighting that all session. We're very close, and I'm very hopeful we'll get it. But the money needs to be in your pocket. You know how to spend it better than government. We need to stop growing government and cut the wasteful spending. I know that sounds simple, but think about how many trillions of or billions of dollars that the government's spending. They don't even know where they're spending it now. We need to rein this in, and as I said before, a constitutional amendment for a balanced budget. Let's get it done, folks.
Breather, if you want to stand up and stretch for a minute. We're going to do just a few questions from the floor, and then we're going to be out of here, because I'm going to try to keep it as close to 9 o'clock. We did start a little bit late, so feel free to stretch for a second. Also, if you haven't turned in your ballot for the straw poll, this is last call for that. And when you do sit down, while you're up, grab your wallet and write a check out and hand it to your life back. And we're going to pass the hat around here in a minute. So you have about 3 minutes, and then we're going to proceed.
Oh, yeah. I did this too fast. I wasn't sure how this one would go.
Tell him I'm not leaving. We're not. I know. She has a good bottle. I told him I didn't leave my house until after.
Well, there was a roundabout out there, but I haven't. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I tell you, I think it's the most bad I
Okay, if you've stretched your legs well enough, let's get started and then we can all go home. I will have, hey guys at the back with some of the baskets, we're going to pass the hat. Can you guys at the back, can I get a couple of you guys back there to pass the hats down here? Remember, if you give us a check, the Kansans for Life pack, we just need to have the, what do you call it, the disclosure form that they passed out. And pass that down. This money will be used, we're going to hire, well, we have a plan. Believe it or not, we have a plan to win some of these races, including the 2nd District race. And we need your help. It's going to cost some money. So we're going to pass the hat now. You guys, they'll be passing the hat. Just be sure we have, if you enclose a check, just put it with the donation form they passed out. So now if the candidates can come back, we'll do a few questions from the audience. And then we'll have closing remarks, and we'll be out of here. We did start about 10 minutes late, so we'll probably be out about 10 minutes late, but I'm hoping to keep it rolling here. These questions, I want you to spend no more than 30 seconds on. I'm not going to have a full 2 minutes of answers, so. And since the Kevin Jones representative is up here, we'll start with him. How can your candidate unify the Republican Party and win the election in November?
Well, I think the first thing is we all have a common interest, and that's what we need to be out there talking about. All of the candidates need to be out there talking about it, and that's step one. Kevin's been great at being a coalition builder. He's well thought of in the House.
Every time I go out there and run what
There's not the acrimony that is associated with some people. When he debates to get to your heart, because at the end of the day, to win these votes, you got to win people's hearts. We can throw rocks all day long if we want to, but if you don't have a strategy and a plan to make those rocks land where they need to change hearts, we're not going to change votes. And that's the pastor and Kevin, is to change those hearts.
Well, I was the 2nd District Chairman of the Republican Party, and I know how to bring all sides of the party together. And believe me, it is not an easy task, but you work with individuals and you respect them. I won my Senate district with 73% of the vote. You know there's not 73% Republicans there. But I work hard, I communicate with my district, and that's how I will work to bring people together. It's a team effort. I played a lot of ball. One of my coaches is in the audience here, and he knows. In fact, I joke about it in the legislature. You can tell who played team ball and who didn't. And so we just need to bring people together in a positive manner. And one way we can do this also is by running a positive campaign. Run positive on what you will do, not the negative on what your opponents do.
So I won a contract to do some work in Iraq, and it started off with 3 people. Over the course of a few years, it grew to 470 people, and I was the manager of all that. Early on, they asked, Steve, do you want this to be a Sunni company or a Shiite company? And being the American, I was like, well, we're just going to have them both. And they said, yeah, you can't do that. Do you want a Sunni company or do you want a Shiite company? I said, I'm having both. Can't do that. I said, watch me. Time? Well, what do we get? 30 seconds? All right. Long story short, through hard work and a lot of weeding out of people that didn't conform to the culture, we were able to not only have both Sunnis and Shiites, but I did something they said I could never do, which is I had female middle managers throughout the ranks. I'm very proud of that. I can bring people together. Thank you so much.
I believe my credentials are going to be one of the things that I believe will help us come together. One of the things that I was taught throughout all of my nursing career and my doctoral programs is that we have to be a good communicator. I've had to transcend all kinds of lines to get to where I'm at today. Be it in the Bureau or be it in nursing, I've had to do that. So I believe that being a communicator is going to be the key. I believe that I am the candidate that you should vote for in terms of, look at those credentials, check me out.
All battle is directed towards the dissolution of human groups. If you can retain the cohesion of your group while destroying the cohesion of the enemy group, you win. All battle, political battle as well. I was a co-founder and am currently co-chair of the Republican Men's Leadership Series, the Red Jackets. The purpose of that was to bring together men, train them in political leadership. We've done over 200 men in Kansas in the last 7 years, and we're continuing. I spent my time in the Army, large part of it in the Green Berets, working with people in different cultures, bringing them together. I can relate to the Sunni Shia type thing. I'm familiar with that problem, and it's hard dealing with different cultures, but we have to learn how to do it. We have to come together, and we have to destroy the cohesion of the enemy group. This is a metaphor, the Democrats, political opponent. We can do that, but we do have to have what the question calls for. We have to be cohesive. We have to work together as Republicans with common Republican values that are expressed in our platform. Thank you.
I think I understand the question. I just want to say thank you so much for your patience tonight. Thank you to my surrogate for speaking for me, Carl. And so the question is bringing the Republican Party together afterwards. And I just have to speak real quick to the integrity of our Republican Party. When we were trying to get judges, essentially that are retained, we were trying to get them ousted this last time. I was going door to door out in the country. Right? Out in the country. First door I go to, I drive for half a mile. I drive up, walk up to the front door, and guess what's on that front door? One of you guys put on that door, you put one of the flyers to oust the judges. And then I went to the next store out in the country, a mile down the road, same thing. Somebody had gone before me and had hung flyers out in the country. What I call it that the integrity of the race. And that's what we have. That's what this group has, that's what the party has, and it's because we cannot, we will not let Paul Davis get in. We will come together. We will have cohesive strategy, and we will come together, and we will win. And so I appreciate you guys being here, and I don't know how many more questions we have, but thank you guys.
Okay, this question is from an audience member. What is your position on NAFTA and other multinational trade agreements? And we'll start with Kevin.
I'm sorry, do we have a minute? Okay, 30 seconds. We're moving quickly. So right now, it's a lot in the news with our trade agreements and with our president's position on trade agreements. Obviously, that this is a very big deal for everything from our agriculture to any of the commodities that we produce in Kansas, and we want to make sure that we're not being hurt in this. But at the same time, with those trade agreements, we're getting hurt in those trade agreements. So at this time, when it comes to NAFTA and it comes to our different our trade, people are kind of torn on it, right? Right now, I support the president and what he's doing, and it's because of this. I believe in his negotiation skills, and I believe in what he's doing when it comes to those negotiations. It hurts. I also believe in discipline a lot. It hurts us, or at least it looks like it's going to hurt us short term, but we need to have, those deals need to be better. And so I believe in that, and I want to see it through.
Yeah.
I support fair trade. And who would have dreamed that North Korea and South Korea would be talking and signing a treaty? And that exactly, this president is getting things done. And so he is negotiating our trade. And we need to put the faith and the effort and give him the benefit of the doubt. You may not like what he tweets once in a while, but how else could he get his message communicated to us? He has no other venue other than tweeting or social media, because the press sure isn't telling what he wants to say. So we need to trust our president in this. As I've said before, we are walking on eggshells. We have to understand how critical those trade agreements are to our Kansas economy. And hope and pray and put it in God's hands that our president will get it done, because we put it in God's hands that election, and guess what? We got it done, because nobody thought Trump had a chance.
I'm a free trade thinker. I believe that free trade is the best regulatory method. Free and fair trade. I believe that it benefits the farmers and ranchers who are already struggling to put food on our tables and their own. I'm not worried about trade deficits and trade surpluses. You know who has a trade surplus? Venezuela, where they're literally eating dogs. So don't get too wrapped around that. Free trade all the way. Thank you.
My last assignment in the Bureau was in Los Angeles. The Bureau put me in a housing unit on a place called Terminal Island. And I would see the big cargo ships every day come in and go out. It was a good thing because we were able to get things done. However, we have to make sure that we are having a fair trade agreement. It grieves me when I look at the fact that I'm paying that our farmers cannot get their grains moved. And I know, every day in Los Angeles Harbor, I would see these ships. We just need to keep pushing through. I know this is hard to say, but the president, I think it was the president that said, no pain, no gain, or the short-term pain. It's not good for us right now. But down the line, I do believe that we would end up with fair trade, more free trade, and it will work out for the best of all Americans.
NAFTA was put together basically to allow Canada, Mexico, and the United States, and part of the Caribbean, to work together for better economic advantage for everyone. Not sure that it was negotiated as well as it could have been. It's being relooked by the president now and his people. I think we're going to be able to get a better deal out of it. The problems with tariffs with China is another one that's similar to that. And again, as the other candidates have said, it appears as though we need to get a little bit better deal around the world, and we're doing that. And it's going to be a little bit risky. It's going to be a little bit sitting on the edge of your seat, but I think we're going in the right direction, and I think we're going to be in good shape. Nobody can outproduce Americans. Better quality products, better price. We can outproduce the world both in agriculture, manufacturing, and service. We've proven it over and over again. Fair trade, we win. We didn't get to the fair trade part. Thank you.
We'll do one more question from the audience, and then we're going to have closing statements, and we'll be ready to go. And there are a lot of good questions, about 5 more, but we don't have time for all of them. But this question is a pretty good one. It's, what will you do to bring good, high-paying jobs back to Kansas?
With my software background, I've talked about this, and simply, you may or may not understand it, but bust up the Beltway. We can, with our infrastructure and broadband, we can bring technical jobs to Kansas. We can have people working out of their homes and working on projects that are international, and that's what I want to do. I've talked to U.S. legislators already about building a coalition with the Midwest and bringing some of those jobs to Kansas. We absolutely need to do that. The other thing we need to do is our education system in Kansas. We have a wonderful education system. We have a great way of life. We need to sell that. We need to let people know that, you know, the quality of life in Kansas is wonderful. And why wouldn't you want to raise your family and have your kids here? One thing we do need to do in Kansas, though, is shut down the abortions. Over 50% of our abortions in Kansas are from out-of-state individuals, and a majority of them are from Missouri. So if you don't think that's not a federal issue, it absolutely is. But we can bring jobs to Kansas too, and it's by building coalitions and getting people here. I worked on a software contract. It was billions of dollars, over 45 million users. I'm working on it from my home in Parker, Kansas. Those are the types of jobs that we can bring to Kansas, and I will fight to do that.
Economic and job growth is dependent on unleashing the potential of the American worker. That's the intersection of a lot of different factors, but it rests on capitalism, competition, open market, free trade, education, and incentivizing research and development. It has also to do with protecting our intellectual property against copycats in Asia, and also protecting our labor force with the wall and appropriate regulations to combat illegal aliens. The hope is that the Republicans work together and promote a strong fiscal policy moving forward, and I'd like to be a part of that. Thank you.
My job on the Port Authority is to bring jobs to Kansas. I just reviewed a job last week where we'll be bringing in 3 individuals making $150,000 a year, 8 making $80,000 a year, 7 making $50,000 a year, and we did that by looking at our marketing. So we do have some incentive programs out there. I would like to expand that for the entire state of Kansas. We talked a little bit about education. I talk about having a PhD, but let me tell you, I started off with a technical degree because I needed to be able to get out there and get my hands on work. So we got those kind of jobs. So yes, you're looking at an educated person that has a technical degree, an associate degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a PhD. And each one of those levels, no matter who you are, we can find work for you here in Kansas if we market Kansas the way that I believe we can market it. Thank you.
Money knows where it's welcome. One of the candidates mentioned that it's a point. Lower taxes, that'll work. Believe me, we need to lower our taxes. We need low, even taxes across the board. The fair tax would be a great thing. I think that would help our economy quite a bit. School choice. Yeah, we've got great education, but just as we were talking about in socialized medicine, you go to school choice and let the parents, the families begin to get more involved in the students' education and choose their education. We're going to see much better education, a much better educated workforce, and you're going to attract people into Kansas who want that. The other thing we need to do is we need to become a little bit more veteran friendly. I live up in Leavenworth. They all live across the river in Missouri. We need to be bringing them back over to our side. These folks are qualified, experienced, good people. We need to bring more of them into Kansas. We can grow this state, and we can grow it very rapidly. We need to lower taxes, low, even taxes, school choice, and better economics. Thank you.
I believe to bring jobs to Kansas, one of the first things that we can do is stop murdering over 6,000 of our future leaders and entrepreneurs. I believe that's the first thing that we can do. Can you guys agree with that? One of the things I'm passionate about is life, and I missed a lot of that opportunity to speak about that tonight. But to further answer that question, we have a culture. We have a culture of debt, not just in our nation, but in our state. And with that, just across our state, and this is not just Kansas debt, or not just the state debt, this is local and regional debt. And it goes up over $20 billion in bonding and loans and all of that. When we get into debt, when we have debt, we lose opportunities. I meet with different college students, and I've spoke to them, and I ask them, I say, okay, how many in here have debt? Almost every single one. I had one guy who was like, my dad's paying for it all, so that's all good. But we're going into debt so far that when we come out, or when we get to the other end of our education, or get to the other end of our opportunities, we lose opportunity for the American dream to create jobs and to create the actual opportunities. And that's really what we have to do. When you get back to it, go back to the family level, and we have to start getting rid of the culture of debt. I appreciate it.
Now we'll have the closing statements, and we'll just go right down the row here, Karen.
Well, thank you guys again for coming. You know, it is so critical, this election, you've heard that, and I'll reiterate it. We need somebody that has experience. We need somebody that can get things done, and I am that candidate. I have a proven track record, not only with small business in our ranch, but also with my legislative experience. I've been successful in the Kansas legislature, and I want to take that experience to DC and represent you and stand strong for Kansas. And that's what I'll do. We need to protect our Constitution. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, protect the unborn and the elderly. I have 2 national endorsements, Susan B. Anthony list, which I said pro-life, and also Maggie's list for my fiscal conservative values and legislation. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. And we need legislators who will do that and who will support President Trump to drain the swamp, build the wall, and get it done. and I will be that candidate. I stand before you tonight asking for your support on August 7th. It is absolutely critical that we put the best candidate forward. We can win this race. We can win it together, and we can stand strong for limited government, individual freedom, traditional values, and economic development. That's my platform. It hasn't changed from the House, from the Senate, or the U.S. House, and it shouldn't change. The issues might change, but the platform never changes. We need somebody with strong values. I will be that person for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for attending tonight. Thank you to Kansas for Life for hosting the debate. And love being surrounded by so many pro-life voters. But I also acknowledge that it's worth taking pause to remember how many lives we've lost in the last 45 some odd years since Roe v. Wade. Some 1.1 million deaths each year. These kids, they had a destiny, and we took it from them. They had hopes and dreams and a life, and we ended it. We need to fight that. We need to do it together. Regardless of who the candidate is, we need to fight that. That's not okay. You cannot kill kids. I respect that there's differing opinions. We're all adults. But can we please come together on the fact that you can't kill children? America is exceptional, and not because we are, to be honest. America is exceptional because the values upon which our country were founded are exceptional. And our exceptionalism comes in no small part from freedom, and there is no greater freedom than the gift of life. So thank you. God bless you. Have a good night. I'm Steve Watkins, and I look forward to your support. Thanks.
I really enjoy the other candidates here, and we kind of joke and tease, and Steve, oops, I guess he gets another minute? Yeah. He said, you keep saying that you're easy to come after. I mean, after following him, it's like, I didn't mean that in any way, Steve, other than, you set me up for such great opportunities to spring forward. So that's just a positive, sir. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight as well. I don't get many opportunities to come out and talk with folks, but this is a great opportunity for me to do that. President Donald Trump, first president elected without any kind of prior public office, with the exception of George Washington. Does that mean our country is starting over? I don't know. But I do know this. The president said that he was going to go to Washington and do what? Drain the swamp. But what does swamp mean? And some of you guys have heard this about a week ago, but I'm going to say it again. I want you guys to get into a spelling lesson with me. Swamp is spelled how? S-W-A-M-P. Well, we don't want to send someone to Washington who's going to stop working for most people. How do we took that into a swamp? Don't send someone to Washington that is going to stop working to assist or aid most people. I'm talking about you. Pick a candidate that you know or you believe will go to Washington and do just the opposite. So what's the opposite of an anti-swamp? Someone that's going to go to Washington to do what? Start working to aid most people. And I'm talking about you guys. He didn't get elected. He didn't get elected because he said, oh, I'm going to do something different. I'm telling you, I'm trying to be that anti-swamp person. But I'm also saying this. When you look at me, you're going to find a person that has never been, let me go ahead and make sure I got this right. I wrote this down. Never been in jail. Last speeding ticket I had was in 1986. All my children are by one woman. So my point to you is this. There's going to be really hard to find any kind of dirt whatsoever on me in the general. It's just not there. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm going to tell you, that's one less hurdle and one less thing you guys have to worry about if I'm your candidate.
This is the part we're supposed to brag, right? Okay. Integrity, transparency, courage, predictability. Told you I joined the Army as a private, got out as lieutenant colonel, got the combat infantry badge, a couple of bronze stars, the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry with the Silver Star, Purple Heart. Saw action in a couple of different places, mostly with the 5th Special Forces Group, Mike Force, also with the 82nd Airborne Division. Got into some interesting problems in the bureaucratic side as well. If you have time, I'll talk to you about those. Got crossways with the Senate President because of what happened last year with the Religious Freedom Bill, not last year, the year before, the Religious Freedom Bill. I nominated somebody against her as president. It's supposed to be a secret vote. I put out an email to all Republican senators and told them how I was voting on each one of the leadership positions and why. And it's supposed to be a secret vote. I thought it should be a transparent vote. Needless to say, I was not made a chairman of anything, and I'm very lucky that I have a parking spot. I will speak truth to power. I will go where you need to go to get the job done. Not for glory, but to get the job done. I will be transparent. I will take the blows. I will take the flack from Planned Parenthood and a bunch of others who will fight me as they have done for years because they see me as being a credible threat. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. And I try to do it as transparently, as honestly, and as courageously as possible. And I very much appreciate the prayers, the good support, and well wishes that I've gotten over the years from my family and friends. I'm extremely grateful to you all for coming out as part of the pro-life effort and to the Kansans for Life who have been in the fight for so many years. Thanks for all that you do. And let's continue this fight. Let's win it. We have to make this a Republican seat in November. That's the objective. Thank you.
I want to also thank you guys for being here tonight. And very quickly, I want to say why I'm running. And the why I'm running truly is because there's a battle over our faith, over our family, over our freedom. And it's constant at every level. But there's a battle in Washington for our faith, our family, and our freedom. And I am the candidate to go after that and to fight and to keep our God-given rights. That said, I have to go back to when I was a pastor at Faith Chapel, which is about 3 blocks from Tillage Clinic. And at that time, we had the opportunity to pray and to minister to young ladies, but dads of young women and the husbands of young women too. And it was a powerful time that really brought the pro-life movement really close to home. We marched, and my wife and I marched in marches with David Gitrich down in Wichita, but we see the battle over our family. We haven't won. We haven't won. When there's over 6,000 young lives, future leaders that are being destroyed, it is something that we have to continue to fight for, and we have to do it very strongly. When I first ran, I ran against an 18-year incumbent Democrat. I ran against a person who had been in the system for a really long time, and we won, and we won very well. 2 years later, we ran against the Paul Davis machine. Lynn Jenkins won by 12 points. I won by 11 points. We both trounced Davis. We've proven ourselves to be able to beat the Davis machine. That's the type of person that we need fighting for the lives of our children, especially at the federal level. It's what we need and what we're going to fight for. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate your hearts and that you're going to get behind that. I tell you one more thing. Matthew 20, 15 through 16 is where Jesus is talking to the sons of Zebedee. Actually, his mom. Their mom comes up and they were talking to him. And they essentially, he said, they wanted to be the greatest in the kingdom. What said his right and his left. And he said, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your what? Your servant. Must be the servant. That's what Jesus did. He came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So I would encourage each of you to step up in service, whether it's at the school board level, it's at county level, whatever it may be. But at each of those levels, I encourage you to fight for life and for our faith and our family and our freedom. And that's how we take back Kansas, how we take back America, and how we stop the reversal of this battle that's going on. I thank you. I ask for your vote on August 7th, and when it gets to the general, I ask for your support and the Republican support and Republican integrity we talked about. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your patience tonight and for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to have all the candidates stand up, and we'll just give them a round of applause. It takes a lot to run for these positions. We appreciate it. And I want to say a closing prayer, and then I am going to say a couple words about the straw poll. Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we just pray that you'll help us to remember your presence here and with us. We pray, Lord, that you'll just be with this upcoming election, Lord, and not let us, because of complacency, turn our leadership in Washington, representing us, over to people that don't represent Christian values. And we just ask, Lord, you'll help us to be united and to just show love to each other. And I do thank you, Lord, that these candidates just were so civil to one another this evening. Thank you, Lord. And we just pray everyone will have safety as they go tonight. Amen. Okay, just want to say a couple words about straw polls. I know there were a few ruffled feathers about straw polls. There's going to be lots of straw polls between now and August. Straw polls represent how much you organize. It doesn't represent necessarily how people out in the grassroots are going to vote. However, in this straw poll, so the numbers, when I read the numbers off, I want you to remember that every one of these votes cost $10, and that went to help the Kansans for Life PAC. That's the main thing I want you to remember. And that money is going to help elect pro-life candidates. So no matter how the numbers came out, I want you to, it's striking to me, the numbers I want you to look at is the totals. Because each number represents $10 and it went into the PAC. And that's the part I appreciate. So the numbers are Tyson 271, Fitzgerald 119, Jones 47, Watkins 7, Tannehill 0, and Fields 3. So, but what I want you to remember is that represents resources to help us. That's why we did it. We did it in good fun, and that's what it's about. I know everybody's real serious about the race, but you know what? Any of these candidates is 100% better than Paul Davis. So thank you for coming.